What's happening? How are all of you doing? Welcome to Americans Learn. My name is Kit, and here is my great and good friend colleague Daniel. He is in the house. Daniel, how you doing, buddy?
I'm excited for this next part. I don't know why, but I'm excited. I feel like no, I was gonna make a bad joke. I won't make the joke, but
Well.
my
Nonetheless,
taste buds are marching to victory on that delicious meal that the cavalry unit just had.
number one, how dare you? 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 Rest in peace, Wilbur. My cavalry unit, my U.S. Army cavalry. See,
Don't you mean infantry unit?
okay, well, fine.
Well, remember, if I've learned one thing, cavalry units never change the course of battle, World War One and onward. So it's not like they were gonna do anything anyway.
If they believe they could have, okay. So,
It's, cavalry just start taking off and flying. Oh, we're planes now.
yeah, exactly. Hold me to it. So there you go. All right. Daniel's in a state of shock that I said that. Not everybody. All right. Look, folks, welcome to Americans Learn. Today, we're going to be talking about the invasion of not New York, not New Mexico, but the invasion of New Britain.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, exactly. So the invasion of.
Would you say it's a battle of New Britain?
Yeah, you know what? That is actually pretty cool that you came up with that. But this is the invasion of New Britain, Pacific War. Again, this is done by the great people at Kings and Generals. Please support the original content creators. That link is in the description box below. But also, again, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Americans Learn. Be sure to hit that ring bell notification. But without further ado, since I'm in charge of the ones and twos, let's go ahead and pull up this video and get our learn on.
Should I become an officer and shave next episode?
Well, I mean, I'm growing the beard, so I'm like the resistance fighter. So you could be the professional officer.
That's where I end up anyway.
Last week, the Japanese had commenced their most important operation, the capture of the Dutch East Indies and the important resources that it harbored.
Spices.
Yet this week, they would also
Not only spices, but there's a thing called Texas tea. What's Texas tea?
It's another spice. It's another spice. You put it in your regular tea.
Yes. Wait. Hold on. Because there might be crazy people on the internet be like, "Oh, I'm gonna have some Texas tea." Do not drink Texas tea.
Drink gasoline. No, don't do that either.
No, don't do that.
No, you know
either.
what? Don't drink Texas tea. Don't drink gasoline. Eat some horse meat.
Oh God damn it.
I want to see if they're like, okay, since these guys are no longer a cavalry detachment, we're now going to show them as infantry.
My heart will sink a little if that's the case. I don't think I could take it.
start a new operation for the invasion of the island of New Britain, further trying to interrupt the lines of communication between Australia and the US. As the invaders continue their advance across Borneo and the Celebes, a major breakthrough is achieved at Malaya and the Philippines. Join us as we delve into this critical point of the Pacific War. While there's plenty to say about the fighting on...
All right. If you want to do us a big favor, support the original content creators, because probably that promo has already been expired.
If Magellan was sailing around the world right now, the Japanese would have captured him.
They would have done worse than just capture him, buddy. A lot worse.
Since the start of the war, Tokyo had acknowledged that the British presence in the island of New Britain was a huge threat to one of their most...
The British presence in New Britain.
I love that Britain's like, this is the island we're going to call New Britain. Not any of the other... It's not New Britain instead of Australia, and that's Australia. That's New Britain.
Yeah, that's New Britain. New Britain.
Were they like, we need an island that has no sunlight, that's just cloudy and rainy all the time?
Yeah, exactly. So we need to make sure it's done right. So I wonder, hey, if you're from Australia, how would you have felt if Australia was called New Britain instead of Australia.
Well, if it was, it would just be like we say Australia now.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Interesting.
And-
Yeah, because
And let's be clear, Australia, if it was going to be called anything, would have been Jail Britain.
you don't have to go that low, Daniel.
That's not low. That's just historical relevance.
Important naval bases in the Pacific, the Truk Atoll. In response, they planned Operation R, an invasion of Rabaul in New Britain and Kavieng in New Ireland.
Wow.
The South Seas Detachment of General Hori was earmarked to carry out Operation R after the occupation of Guam,
Does it?
supported by the
Look,
mainstream.
There's
Yeah.
your cavalry. That's where they went.
No, that's another cavalry unit. Okay. No, I'm talking about my own one. Okay. My heart was already broken in the last episode. I can't take it anymore.
Strength of Admiral Inouye's Fourth Fleet.
Wait, pause it.
Due to the
Yes.
rapid
I just want to go back like 2 seconds.
All right, here we
Right
go.
there. I just want to read what they got. So this is a lighter force. They're just
Mm-hmm.
kind of going in.
Yeah, it's they look like they just have light cruisers, destroyers,
The
minesweepers.
Japanese Marines.
Yep, looks like it.
Fourth Fleet. Due to the rapid progress across all theaters of the Pacific, back on January 4th, the Japanese had started to bombard Rabaul, the old capital of the Australian-controlled territory of New Guinea, in preparation for a naval invasion. 10 days later, the South Seas Detachment departed Truk, escorted by the Fourth Fleet's main units. In Rabaul, the Australians had a garrison of around 1,400 soldiers, mainly from the 23rd Brigade, under the command of Colonel John Scanlon, while an independent company of 130 soldiers was also sent to Kavieng for the protection of the island of New
pause it real
Ireland.
quick. I was going to say, can you imagine being any of these commanders, these people on these islands, and all you hear is Japan took this, Japan took this, Japan took this, Japan, and now they're coming towards you, and you have what seems to be the standard garrison size of less than useful for defense.
It's easy to say, well, I could have done this better. I think these commanders worked with what they had
But
as
that's
best
what I'm
as
saying.
they could.
But I'm saying,
But I think
strategically-
I think the fear, but also the determination to withhold. I mean, it really says a lot about the human spirit and resisting. I mean, what it feels like. I mean, God, the amount of bravery that they had to face, and again, the valor that all these men had to stand against a far more superior force. Like I said, what I would have done is break everything down and have everyone focus on being a guerrilla war. Like expect the whole area to be occupied and your forces to be defeated. So what's better? Toe-to-toe slug match where you probably won't be able to. You might win the first round, but the second, third, fourth, fifth round, no, you're getting decimated. Have everyone go into guerrilla units, each have their own commanders. You work independently, and you do everything you can to make the occupying force's life a goddamn living nightmare.
Yeah, I mean it more along the lines of Japan is attacking with forces that will overwhelm any garrison because
Yeah.
of the size of them. I'm not making any commentary or what one of these guys did or didn't do. It's much more of a Japan keeps in, like, they don't have a lot of troops. We already know at the start that they have a rather small allocation of troops that are going to be attacking at all. But that isn't helped by the fact that all of these islands have been chosen strategically to be garrisoned with like under 2,000 troops.
Yeah.
It means that no matter how useful they are, even if they go guerrilla or not,
Yeah.
they're
that's
going
true.
to lose the island. And because of the overwhelming force of the naval bombardments, of the airplanes they're coming in, the experienced troops, the faster tactics, the fact that they have tanks, they don't have really any of those things. They can't really match anything. So when a battle does happen, they're not in a position, like if this was 8,000 troops defending and they had a few tanks, like essentially if the garrisons they abandoned a couple of the islands. I mean, this is not something that the general, Mr. John, can do anything about. This is much more of an overtop strategic point of view.
Mhm.
That they're not going to win any of these, and the low garrison means what we've seen time and time again, that they're not really going to even take out that many. What will happen is they'll get on a frontal attack, and then Japan will flank them, and then they'll all surrender. And then the Japanese lose a couple dozen people in the entire attack, and then 1,000 troops are lost, and then all of their equipment is more or less usually captured intact or mostly intact or enough to be used, and then they just move into the island. They leave a small garrison, very much similar to what they just fought, and then they move on. So it's like these people strategically aren't even in a spot where they could win. That's why I was saying it must be so terrifying, because it's not just it's not just a hey, we can go guerrilla, hey, we cannot go guerrilla. It's we're completely outnumbered, outmanned, outgunned, outexperienced, and we're not going to get reinforcements. And there's nowhere for us to retreat because we're on an island.
Exactly.
We're going to die here, or we're going to surrender.
Something like that.
On January 20th, the 4th Fleet, including carriers Akagi and Kaga, sent over 100 aircraft, which attacked...
Okay, so there are some aircraft carriers right there.
But then that's my point. It's like, what are you going to do? It looks like they had like 2 or 3 anti-aircraft guns. Good luck. They don't have the option of winning.
Rabaul in multiple waves. 8 Wirraways attacked, with 3 being shot down, 2 crash landing, and another damaged. The following day, an Australian Catalina flying boat discovered the invasion fleet just off Kavieng and sent a warning to headquarters before being shot down.
Oh, and one more thing.
In response,
I just want to put out there, I really don't feel like I hear enough about flying boats. And this entire documentary has shown me nonstop that flying boats were like absurdly essential. It's like the whole recon force. You can put a flying boat anywhere. You don't even need a runway. Just put it in a shallow area where it's not too turbulent, and just you have a scout force. And it's not really until this documentary that I'm realizing not only how common scout planes were, but how seaplanes were, but how prevalent they were. They're everywhere. I mean, you saw like when I was looking at the invasion force in the last episode, it was like they had 40 of them. They were just bringing with them.
Yeah, and again, when you look at the, let's face it, folks, if you've been to the Atlantic Ocean or Pacific Ocean, let's be very clear here. The ocean's pretty vast, and if you're going to be scouting on that, you need to have a vehicle that is not only reliable but adaptable, and a seaplane is one of those things. So there you go.
Australian soldiers quickly took up positions, and their aircraft were hastily evacuated to Leh. But before continuing with the invasion of Rabaul, we turn to Burma, where the first major Japanese operation.
And then I was curious, so I just Googled a little bit about seaplanes. One big advantage of seaplanes is that they can go like 3 times the range of any of the other planes.
Incredible. And again, a useful tool.
Were also taking place.
It's crazy.
At the start of
it's like as much as we hear like, oh my God, the submarine spotted this or that, almost everything we've seen in this is like a seaplane spotted something.
Exactly.
The war. The 143rd Regiment of the 55th Division accomplished the first attacks against British Burma during the invasion of Thailand. Upon reaching the Kra River, which marked the Thai border, the Japanese soldiers had quickly occupied Victoria Point on December 14th of 1941. The British forces at Burma, under Lieutenant General Thomas Hutton, then tried to delay the Japanese by blowing up bridges connected to Thailand, but they could not stop the Japanese from launching probing raids on southern Tenasserim. At the same time, Commander-in-Chief in India, Sir Archibald Wavell, was negotiating with Chinese leader Chiang Kai-shek to aid them with the defense of the Burma Road, the last Chinese lifeline, as the British only counted with the 46th and 16th Indian Brigades and the 1st Burma Division for the defense of their Burmese colony. In early January, Hutton had placed the 2nd Burma Brigade and the 46th Indian Brigade at Tenasserim itself, with their headquarters at the city of Mulmine. The British plan consisted of keeping the Japanese forces as far away as possible from the port of Rangoon, through which most aid flowed towards the Burma Road and China. In turn, Brigadier John Smythe thought that Tenasserim was practically indefensible, and they should retreat behind the Sitang River to establish more solid defensive positions, something that Hutton strongly opposed. This was to be a mistake, as on December 22nd, the 55th Division of Lieutenant General Ida Shojiro had assembled at Bangkok to prepare the invasion of Tenasserim. They would commence their advance on Moulmein on January 20th of 1942, heading from Raheng towards the Korkorijk Pass. By January 18th, the 143rd Regiment would also manage to overcome the steep, jungle-covered Tenasserim range, then attacking Tavoy and overwhelming the 6th and 3rd Burma Rifles. The Japanese soldiers would next continue their advance on Megui, where the 2nd Burma Rifles were promptly evacuated before engaging the enemy. The occupation of Megui also saw some Burmese nationalists proclaim the creation of the Burma Independence Army, which would go on to accompany Japanese forces in this campaign.
Oh my goodness. Forces of Burma, you trade out one devil for another.
On January 22nd, the first clashes occurred at Korkorijk between the 16th Indian Brigade of the 17th Indian Division and forward units of the 55th Division. The Indian defenders managed to hold on to this position with great tenacity, but they would be eventually outflanked and forced to retreat after 2 days of resistance. Between January 23rd and 29th, the Japanese would make a determined effort to establish air superiority over Tenasserim and Rangoon, and on the night of January 30th, their main attack on Moulmein would begin, as Japanese forces engaged the remainder of the 2nd Burma Brigade to the south and east of the city. The invaders quickly managed to force a position on the left of a ridge, and then continued to increase their pressure over the defenders throughout the next day. This position was almost impossible to defend, and the brigade was getting squeezed until Smythe finally ordered the retreat at the end of January 31st. The way to Rangoon was now open, but will have to wait some time to cover the main attack on Burma. Meanwhile, in Malaya, the situation was critical for the British defenders. On the coast, the Japanese had taken the town of Moa, annihilating the 45th Indian Brigade and opening a hole in West Force's defences, while to the north, the Australians had been pushed out of Gemas after losing much equipment. On January 17th, the retreating Allied units that managed to escape from Moa regrouped at Bakri and established a defensive perimeter around it. General Percival ordered them to recapture Moa, but the remaining Indian soldiers fell into a Japanese ambush, suffering heavy casualties, and then decided to call off the counterattack. The next day, General Nishimura of the Imperial Guards Division started a three-pronged assault against the Allied positions, thus commencing the siege of Bakri. Yet the spearhead of the attack, composed of Type 95 Hago tanks, advanced without infantry support and were wiped out by Australian gunners. Despite their valiant resistance, employing an excellent tactic of moving one section at a time to enfilade the enemy positions, by January 19th, Bakri had been surrounded by the Japanese invaders, who then started a concentration.
Something I've just realized is that the Japanese, on top of everything, are also giving away a huge amount of information on their tactics, although it's working perfectly right now.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's gonna there's whatever, like 10 Princeton people somewhere in England are sitting there looking at all these battles going, how do we deal with this?
Or better yet, the way I would describe this is you're professional. Okay, you're entering into the professional fighting world, right? And obviously you're starting off, you're beginner, but as you realize and you're facing off against opponent and then probably more name recognition opponents, you're able to recognize and look at their tactics, how they fight, how they dodge, how they block. So you're realizing how your opponent fights, and as soon as you figure it out, you could, number one, make better gear and equipment, which is what the Allies or what the American industry will be doing, making more planes, ships, and tanks and artillery and weapons that will be on par or even better than what the Empire of Japan is able to produce.
And then on top of that, because Japan's winning, it's hard to take any lessons.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of failure. So they're like, well, this strategy is great. It's been working. Every time we've used it, it's working, which means that they're going to be slower to change.
And plus, every tank that Japan loses, same thing with Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. Every plane, tank, ship that they lose, how can they replace it? How fast can they replace it? The United States will get to the point to where anything we lose, we make 10 more of it.
Concentrated shelling of the area. At the same time, the 5th Division had been applying heavy pressure to Australian forces to the north, forcing them to retreat to Segamat by January 20th. Seeing the rapid progress of the Japanese on the coast, they would continue to retreat towards the town of Kluang, which they would reach on January 24th. In the meantime, a single Indian company was holding off an entire Japanese division, while the rest of the Allied forces started to retreat towards Parit Silong on January 20th. Isolated, this company was cut off from the Allied retreat, getting almost completely annihilated by the enemy forces. Yet West Forces' retreat was also cut off by the Japanese, who managed to establish roadblocks 2 kilometers or so from Bakri. Several failed assaults were executed to break through, until a bayonet charge, led by Lieutenant Colonel Charles Anderson, managed to break through the Japanese roadblock. Under heavy Japanese pressure, Anderson would then go on to lead the Allied forces on their withdrawal to Parit Silong. They arrived at the Palit Silong Bridge on January 22nd,
Wow.
but the bridge was already in Japanese hands,
Ooh.
so Anderson would have to fight his way through it. Heroically, the Allied forces resisted tank attacks at their rear while launching continuous assaults against the bridge. Yet Anderson's efforts would be unsuccessful, and so he would decide to retreat northeast towards Yongpeng by January 23rd, leaving behind substantial amounts of equipment and all their wounded men. These wounded men would be subjected to the same Japanese retaliations that the latter had shown elsewhere during the war. After being harshly mistreated, the 150 wounded men would be subsequently executed.
Wow. The Japanese killed many with machine guns, rifle blows, bayonets. Some even lit on fire using petrol, apparently to remove war crime evidence. There was only a handful of survivors who escaped with the help of local Malaysians.
Wow.
Executed during the Parit Silong massacre. This
Just to ask if there's anyone in the viewing audience that had a relative or a survivor from that battle. I know we might have an international audience, maybe. If you feel like you want to, please share the story if you want. I know it would be very sensitive to do so, but I think a lot of us are unaware of some of the massacres that took place. I mean, we hear of them, but it looks like Kings and Generals is going to be talking about every single massacre and war crime that's taking place. And while we do like to have fun reacting to these videos and learning with all of you, let's be very clear here. This is a horrific incident that took place, and it's just a sign of just how brutal the Empire of Japan was as it was continuing its conquest in the Pacific. So there you go. And if there's anything that's being missed or anything you guys want to inform us about, please share it in the comment section below. We're excited to hear your feedback. Let's continue on. Unless you want to add anything, Daniel.
Oh.
was to be the end of the Battle of Muar, and afterwards West Force would establish positions on a line that extended from Mersing on the east coast through Kluang and then to Batu Pahat on the west coast, while preparing for a final retreat towards Singapore. Now we turn to the Dutch East Indies, where the 16th Army and the 3rd Fleet were preparing to resume their offensives in Borneo and the Celebes. After conducting mopping-up operations in Tarakan and Manado, the Japanese forces prepared to launch simultaneous attacks on Balikpapan and Kendari by the end of this week. Reinforced by units from Jolo, the Sakaguchi detachment departed Tarakan on January 21st, supported by Admiral Nishimura's fleet. Their plan was to have a battalion-sized unit secretly ascend the Wain River in front of the city of Balikpapan to advance deep into the rear of the city so that it could take control of its weak points in a swift surprise attack. Meanwhile, the Dutch garrison of Balikpapan numbered some 1,100 men, mainly from the 6th Battalion, under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Cornelis van den Hogenband.
I need to see Admiral Ship-a-Day earn his namesake, because right now there's some ships coming his way, or comes his friends' ways. You know, Ship-a-Day, come on, don't be sleeping on the job. I need you in the game, coach.
On January 18th, alerted of an incoming Japanese attack, the Dutch commander ordered the destruction of all oil installations in Balikpapan, trying to prevent their full employment by the enemy. On January 22nd, the Japanese invasion fleet was sighted by an American PBY, so the Dutch sent some Martin B-10 bombers and 12 F-2A Brewster Buffaloes to escort to attack the convoy, as well as some of their submarines.
All right.
Despite sinking the Nanamaru transport ship and damaging others while losing a single B-10, they could not prevent the landings of the Sakaguchi detachment by the early hours of January 24th. Without meeting any resistance, the main force of the Sakaguchi detachment quickly seized the Dutch airfield and then continued on towards Balikpapan. At the same time, an American task force sent by Admiral Hart was approaching the vicinity of the Dutch city. This task force, consisting of 4 destroyers, under the command of Rear Admiral William Glassford and Commander Paul Talbot, launched a strong attack against 12 Japanese transport ships, sinking 4 transports and damaging many more vessels. In return, 2 of the American destroyers only suffered light damage before retreating back to the sea. In the meantime, the surprise unit got to the mouth of the Wayne River by early morning, beginning their ascent up the river. On the morning of January 25th, these soldiers got to the rear of the city, while the main force of the detachment reached the northern outskirts of Balikpapan. The Dutch garrison had been taken completely by surprise, and by midday, the surprise unit advanced into Batu Ampar and defeated Hergenband's forces in battle. They would then join with the rest of the detachment to enter into the city of Balikpapan and capture the whole urban area. Mopping up operations began the next day, aimed against the town of Samarinda, while a battalion-sized detachment under Lieutenant Colonel Kume Motozo was created to seize the oil fields at Sanga Sanga.
Again, oil fields, fundamentally important to any mechanized military. But geez, it's really incredible to see just the amount of power the Empire of Japan has and how it's able to overwhelm its opponents.
Simultaneous to the Battle of Balikpapan, Admiral Takagi's forces had left Banka on January 21st, launching their attack on Kendari 3 days later. With the landings of the Sasebo force by early morning, the small Dutch garrison of 400 soldiers was caught off guard and had to retreat to Mandongan after destroying as much of the Kendari 2 airfield as possible. Kendari and its airfield then fell by midday, while the Dutch forces retreated further back to Tawanga on the Konaweha River, from where they would start to execute guerrilla warfare. Due to intense rain making visibility poor, the next morning a happy accident happened for the Allies, as the destroyer Hatsuharu collided with the cruiser Nagara.
I would have hated being the captains of both those vessels. It's like, how did we screw this up?
But our own tactics turns against us.
No, ship here collides in. Now, here's the thing. I'm not an expert at, surprisingly, I'm not an expert of manning a naval warship.
No, you're just good at getting off of it and getting onto land.
Yes. But the thing is, and no, while I did serve in the Marine Corps, I was never on a ship. But they, of course, the Marines are always known as like, hey, we're in ships. But I never was in a ship.
Watch, I'm gonna be very controversial. Don't worry, he's just the Navy's army.
I am following YouTube's guidelines, but I just swore at you in my mind. I yelled at you in my mind.
I just appreciate that restraint.
Just like that.
It's like it's one of those responses where I'm being an absolute dick, but like I'm also technically being correct.
No, horribly incorrect. But anyways, as I was saying, if you're a ship expert and you know how ships operate, how the hell does this happen where two large ships collide? Because obviously, there's got to be someone keeping an eye on the ocean, like all clear, all clear. Hey, there's a ship. Hey guys,
But you've seen it rain that hard though, where it's raining so hard you can't see 10 feet in front of you.
true. I was stationed in North Carolina. When it rains hard there, it's pretty freaking bad.
The collision left them both with severe damage, so they had to sail back to Davao for repairs. Yet by January 25th, with the fall of Balikpapan and Kendari, the Japanese had achieved their next step in their plan of invasion for the Dutch East Indies, getting slowly but surely ever closer to the island of Java. But in the Philippines, the Americans had much bigger things to worry about. With the Abukay Line pierced and the 51st Division destroyed, General MacArthur had sent his last reserves to stop the Japanese advance before it was too late. In turn, General Nara of the 65th Independent Mixed Brigade decided to slice through the Abukay Line along the Abo-Abo River Valley, and although the Philippine scouts offered much resistance, they could hardly stop the advance of the Japanese 9th Regiment. Eventually, however, General Parker's efforts managed to pay off, as the American forces began to hold off their enemy in a series of attacks and counterattacks that lacked decisive action. Meanwhile, General Homer demanded more progress on the western sector, so he reinforced the 122nd Regiment there with the main force of the 16th Division, under the command of Major General Kimura Naoki. With Kimura now in charge of the western offensive, the Japanese forces started to push the 1st Division out of the Malban Line by January 18th, while the main strength of the 16th Division broke through the apparently not impassable Mount Nati barrier and
Someone found a way to climb the mountain. Big brain tactics. I mean, you got a mountain there.
I mean, we all sort of were like, yeah, that seems like that's a hole in the line.
A big old hole in the line.
You know what people are willing to do? If you give them the choice of, hey, can you run into that machine gun? Or, hey, can you do some hiking? People usually pick the hiking.
I'll go with the hiking, and plus, hey, talk about some scenic views that you can post on the Instagrams.
drive south.
Even though Instagram didn't exist during that time. So, but y'all get the picture. If you time travel back, well, I would not time travel to a war zone. So, but if you're accidentally there, be sure to secretly take some photos and post it on the old Instagram.
Hey guys, look at me. I'm a spy. Treat me well,
west
please.
of the Salanganan Ridge, with the objective of cutting off the Filipino defenders. By January 21st, the Malban Line had been completely pierced, with Japanese soldiers enveloping the 1st Division.
Well, there's a what could be called the cavalry regiment, but stay strong, my friends. I hope the spirits of the animals that you ate are giving you strength.
And pushing towards the coast. Under more pressure, General Wainwright finally ordered the abandonment of the Malban Line and a general retreat southwards. The following day, Nara started a massive assault against the Abukay Line after a heavy bombardment of the American positions, forcing the defenders to slowly commence to retreat. In the end, the deteriorating situation at the Malban Line also forced MacArthur to pull all remaining units from the Abukay Line. On January 23rd, the gradual retreat towards the new Bagak-Arayan Line thus commenced, being successfully completed by January 26th. Now we finally get back to New Ireland, where around 400 SNLF Marines.
He said New Ireland. Did you hear that right? He said New
Ireland.
Ireland. Oh, New Ireland.
Oops. It's right next to New Britain. It has, remember, because it's New Ireland, it has the smaller defensive force.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, I thought he said New Ireland for a second. I was like, it's New Britain, buddy. Come on, Kings and Generals, don't make me. But no, instead, I was in the wrong, and I didn't hear correctly. So see,
to be fair, if I found an island, I would call it New Ireland.
You know what? I wonder if there is a place called New Ireland. Somebody did that. Somebody have had to have, because is there a place called New Ireland?
I'm looking.
Oh, you're Googling it right now? All right. Let us know at the end of the video if that's the case.
Landed on the morning of January 22nd.
It's in the Falklands?
Mm-hmm.
It's called New Ireland?
Mm-hmm. So the British did name an island New Ireland.
Hey, hey, what are we gonna call it? New Island? Are you sure? Because we only get to name a place once. It's never seen New Island. Okay, New Island it is.
Let me see. The Falklands.
quickly taking the main town of Kavieng and engaging the small
Watch, there's gonna be somebody who's watching our channels like, I actually visited New Island, or I'm from New Island.
It's
Like-
highly rated on Google reviews too. 9.8.
Are you?
I mean, no,
you're,
I'm
you're,
sorry.
you're lying.
4.8. 4.8.
You're lying.
out of 5.
Are you serious?
New Island is one of the Falkland Islands, lying north of Beaver Island. It is 238 kilometers from Stanley. It is 13 kilometers long with an average width of 750 meters. The highest point is 226 meters. And it's highly rated. It must be very scenic. It says people saying it's a wonderful nature spot.
Oh, if you've been to New Island, tell us your story in the comment section below. I want to hear this. There's a place called New Island. Well done.
force of Australian commandos. After a fierce struggle, the defenders would have to withdraw towards the Sook River, where they would start guerrilla warfare operations. The following day, the bulk of the South Seas
On pause it
detachment
real quick.
landed at several.
What's up?
I just want to make the point that it seems only in the last, because this is week by week, in the last 2 weeks, that people have been going guerrilla warfare, at least that I've noticed.
Yeah, and
This sounds like a doctrinal change if all of a sudden they're doing it.
I would say that would be the smartest move to do, because a conventional toe-to-toe slug match is not going to work. Now, obviously, here's the problems with doing guerrilla warfare. Number one, you and your unit, you are on your own. Every bullet that you have, everything that is on your person is completely irreplaceable. So make all targets count. And not to mention, even though, let's say, all of your colleagues are gone, you keep on fighting until relieved. I mean, it's a dauntless task, because it's easy to say, oh, just go guerrilla warfare. But you got to remember, people do have to eat food, get medically treated, make sure they're resupplied. And, launching these guerrilla attacks and sabotaging infrastructure, some of them are not always successful, and you got to realize every tactic is needed, but it's by far the smarter tactic to use, and you hold until relieved. You keep on being the thorn in their side. And even if
keep fighting until the 70s if you need to.
Well, yeah. So for those of you who don't know, there's been some recorded cases where Imperial Japanese soldiers were effectively thinking that the war was still ongoing, even in the 1970s, because they were stuck in the jungles or in some very rural areas. And I think there was one story in particular where, one of the colonels of the regiment that said guy was in from the 1970s had to basically get suited up, get dressed up, and be knock on the door, hey, buddy, listen, I'm here to tell you, war's over. War is over.
I think the story, he was he ran a bookstore, and they were hey, dude, one of your guys is still there.
He's like,
what? And he says that he'll only leave if but I think there was two people that also surrendered in Guam in 1948.
Something like that. But I know in the 70s, because he was already an old, the colonel or whatever his rank was. He had to be listen, I love your enthusiasm. It was, man, boy, oh boy, you put me to shame.
I think he killed 20 Filipinos after the war ended.
Jesus. It's I love your enthusiasm, buddy, but it's all over. A lot has changed. Do not listen.
No, that dude was so resistant to the leaflets that were dropped, people coming to him and going, dude, the war's been over for 10 years. He should be in the Inquisition. That kind of attitude.
Can you imagine having that conversation? Buddy, listen, I'm the colonel. I'm telling you, it's over. Yeah. It's all over. Stop.
Yeah, there was literally a Japanese person that went to the Philippines just to go talk to him, and he's I can't, even though you're here, I can't until I'm relieved of duty.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go kill some people at the convenience store over there real quick though.
Get out of there.
Points on the beaches of the Rabaul area, capturing many batteries and some minor airfields. In response, Colonel Scanlon ordered the destruction of military facilities and a general withdrawal from the town of Rabaul. Yet the Australian units had already been engaged by General Hori's forces, so the defenders would split into small groups that managed to retreat through the jungles by January 24th, then starting to execute guerrilla warfare.
It's new.
By this
Everyone's
point,
doing it now.
the Japanese had
Good.
There's got to
Good.
be somewhere someone's like, guys, if we surrender, they're going to either massacre us
Yeah.
or treat us like crap. Just do. It's your best chance. Just do guerrilla warfare.
And all what you could hope for is that eventually the home country and the allied powers do come in with a larger force to liberate said territory. Again, your best case for survival is not a toe-to-toe slug match, but you know, a separated guerrilla warfare tactic, and it's the only thing that can work. You fight or you sabotage as much as you can, and you hold until relieved.
And the other
Had
thing I
occupied
think with
Rabaul.
this
Go ahead.
is that I would love to know after the war what the casualty rate was if you surrendered
Mhm.
versus were in a guerrilla warfare.
Interesting. If anyone wants to enlighten us with those numbers, yes, we do read the comment section. So please type in the comment section below. We like to hear your feedback. Plus, if you're from New Ireland or been to New Ireland, I want to hear your story.
I want to hear about
And
New
we're
Ireland. Perfect. You can do New Ireland to go talk to Ken. I want to hear about New Ireland right there.
There you go. Okay, fair enough.
preparing to begin mopping up operations up to Lassell Bay. The Japanese would also execute mopping up operations in New Ireland until January 24th, then sweeping through Namatanai and its neighboring islands.
Okay.
Do the
Okay,
thing that we would never do.
You can find neither food nor way of escape in this island. You will only die of hunger unless you surrender. No.
No.
It's. I mean, I think it's easy for anyone to say, "Well, I keep on," but knowing how they treat prisoners, I'd be like, I think I'd rather die of starvation than yeah.
You just literally say, have we been effective against them? Really don't surrender.
Yeah.
For 4 days straight. Luckily for the Japanese, the military facilities and airfields at Rabaul were quickly repaired, with Rabaul becoming the biggest Japanese base in the New Guinea region. The success of this operation, as well as the victories at Batan, Moa, Balikpapan, Kendari, and Tenasserim, continued the triumphant trend that the Japanese had been enjoying. Yet this was only the beginning, as next week, the Japanese would continue their advance across the Philippines, Malaya, and the Dutch East Indies, getting ever nearer to the final objectives of their respective campaigns. We will continue releasing weekly episodes on the Pacific War, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see it. Please consider liking, commenting, and
All right. So there's a lot to really talk about, especially in regards towards this entire campaign. Looks like the tactics are changing to go into guerrilla warfare. So here's what I want to ask. In case we do have an international audience, especially those in Australia, if your family members were part of that guerrilla warfare unit, please share your story. We definitely like to hear that perspective. And also, again, it's showing the change of tactics. If and I kind of want to bring back a conversation we spoke a little bit earlier about, and that is, are you given the choice to surrender or do you keep on fighting? And seeing how, again, Japan treats its prisoners, I think I'd rather take the risk of living off the land than doing anything of surrendering. It just seems like, no, we're going to get tortured. We're going to get hurt.
It's very interesting. So like surrendering. So if you're on like the Eastern Front in Europe, don't surrender. That seems to also be really terrible. If you're fighting Japan, or really, it just seems like a lot of Asian armies are not the best with, and I could be wrong on this, this is my impression, are not the best with holding and maintaining the health of their prisoners. Meanwhile, if you're gonna surrender to someone, it should be the US, because they make really big camps in the US and you're fed, you have housing. They're generally better than others.
Well, I mean, the U.S. does not have, especially during the Second World War, did not have the best track record, as there were internment camps that were not good to loyal citizens.
Well, no,
Japanese citizens.
but I'm saying that like the prisoners were held almost to. I mean, I don't want to My point is that if you're going to surrender to someone, it should be the Americans because they literally have so much excess resources. Feeding an extra person in a prison camp for 3 years isn't that big a deal for us. Whereas to any of the other countries, it was either from mentality or resource limitation. America had food and space.
True.
Have you ever looked into like the prison camps like that, like where all the German soldiers got sent in America? They got like sent to Alabama.
Yeah. And what what is so interesting about what happened with some of these German prisoners, like especially this is during the height of segregation, where even the German prisoners of war were treated better than Black American army men who were serving overseas or who were stationed there. I mean, it's like the utter hypocrisy of what was happening here in the United States during that time. But, especially when it comes down to conflict and serving, what was happening and who to surrender to. And especially as we progress later on in the war, as both Japan and Nazi Germany are getting their faces caved in. It was better for all those forces to surrender to us. Whereas in the earlier stages of the war, if you were part of the Allied forces, surrendering to Nazi Germany or the Empire of Japan was a bad move, and it wasn't conducive to your overall health. But I think we do need to start wrapping up, so I'm going to give you the final word.
I just thought this was very interesting. I see that guerrilla warfare is now being employed as a tactic, likely as a response to Japan dealing with people that surrender the way that they did. But we're not really seeing anything slowing down. Japan's not taking any major hits. But to Kit's point that he's made a couple times, which is really important to bring up, they now have to leave a garrison every place they go.
And they can't hold.
And that's not going to work when just like it didn't work. I was talking before about how, like, as soon as they attack, they've won with very low casualties. That's going to be true in the reverse as well.
Agreed. All right. So we are going to be wrapping things up. We'll see all of you the next time here on Americans Learn. And I saw the remnants of the cavalry unit putting up some kind of a fight, even though they don't have horses. I miss those little guys, but there you go. Well, we'll continue on. And as for the Philippines, like I said, MacArthur, don't worry. The Marines got your back. We'll get it back for you. Okay, there you go. You just rest your little army head just right there, and the Marines will take back the Philippines for you. I can't wait for that. It's going to be a great feeling, folks. A great feeling. And yes, I will be completely insufferable. It's good. All right, we're out of here. Be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And also, shout out to Kings and Generals. Please support the original content creators because it's the right thing to do. Take care, keep your heads on a swivel, and keep on winning.